I'm Kyra Kiles, Vice President of Digital Editorial for Johnson Publishing Company. So I run Ebony.com and JetMag.com.
Hi, I'm Gil Robertson, President of the African American Film Critics Association.
Welcome to the latest edition of our Fast Forward series, where we talk about how to colorize TV and film. Today's conversation is with a group that we like to call the reps, the lawyers, the agents, and the studio executives. Listen in on our discussion and then make sure to join the conversation with hashtag FastForward on social media.
So how important is it that you're in the room, that each of you, when certain decisions go down in terms of casting opportunities, in terms of executive hiring, what gets past a certain stage of development?
I mean, now that I'm a producer, former studio exec, I've been in a room, I've just always been the lone person. Right. In every room, always the lone person. Now that I'm running Will Packer's company, there's two of us. But you know, it's progress, but it's just really slow. It's really slow.
And never continuously forward. You have to remember that. Progress is never like a straight line in anything, but it's certainly not a straight line. It fits, it starts, it's going back and then forward, but it's never relentlessly forward.
How do you feel about social media outcry and how that plays into decisions that are being made?
Well, I think, listen, you kind of answered that question. You know, I think that people with social media, they've been empowered. They've been given the microphone. They're speaking out. They're vocalizing their opinion. Before, we were in a purely consumer business of, I'll buy a ticket or I'll turn on the tube and I'll watch whatever is put before me. Now you have people, whether it be, you know, even in the Marvel comic business, whether it be in the autobiographical, you know, the Nina Simone, you have people vocalizing what their opinion is and how this business should be run and how it should be reflected, and conversation that should be part of it that hasn't been in the past. So social media is hugely impacting us in that way.
Do you feel that you face race-related challenges in your work, and what are they?
Well, I think we should never ever, I think sometimes we as people of color often take on the burden of having to talk about race and how race impacts us. But the truth is that race impacts all of us. True. And you can't really be in this society and not be impacted by race in some way. You may not have a greater awareness of it. But for example, if you're a student at Georgetown University, you now know that the very foundation of your education was built upon the sale of enslaved people. So we are all impacted in some way. For me, I often feel that it would be nice if I could be just a lawyer, like my peers are just lawyers. But the truth is that I don't get that benefit. I am absolutely a lawyer who always has to be very cognizant of my place in the community of people of color. I have to be somewhat the shepherd of that for my clients, in the sense of I always have to remind them how their own ethnicity or characteristics impact their careers. And more importantly, I have to often speak up in situations where, unfortunately, I'm the only person who's there to speak up. Because there's often not someone on the studio or business affairs side. I have to say, you may think it's okay to pay this person this much, but the truth of it is that you're really paying this person less because they're a person of color. And you may not recognize that. You're looking at all kinds of attributes as to why you're not paying them. But the true reason is because these attributes all come from the same core.
Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the agency business, if I can, I guess, speak to that a little bit, it's, there's a lot of conversation about, is there enough diversity in the agency business? Is there, where are the African American agents? And, I think, ironically, I'm probably at the best place that I could be and have been in my career. I started off at one company, and I was, in the 20 years of that company, I was the second African American talent agent in the history of that company, and it is arguably the biggest agency in the business. Where I am now at ICM Partners, you know, it is probably the most diverse agency in the business. My head of department is an African American woman. There's 3 other women, African American women as talent agents in my department. There's senior level literary agents, music agents. So, you know, I don't feel that rub the way that I used to. And I think to answer your question earlier, it's important. It's important to be in the room and to be able to be a part of that dialogue, whether it's signing a new client that may be a person of color, or whether it may be a producer or a production company coming in and talking about their slate of films and being able to pitch, you know, maybe it's a different actor, you know, for that role than they were thinking about, and having them take that conversation back to the studio, and then us having that follow-up conversation. So it's really important to be part of that dialogue, and you know, at the risk of being controversial, I think one of my most difficult challenges is the reverse, and that is that I've come upon a couple of experiences where, you know, the African American talent feels that having African American representation is not enough. That's the most challenging for me. I can handle the rest of it. I can handle being the only one in the room. I'm used to that. I went to school that way. But when you have that reverse, after working so hard to get to this point, to be able to give the best representation, having been, you know, trained and, you know, and properly groomed for this, that to me is the hardest challenge.
James?
I'll expound on what Andrea said. I've always been comfortable being the only one in the room.
Not that it's right, but
it is what it is, and I don't. It's not a weight on my back at all. I can operate like, you know, in that environment. What is challenging is being perceived as a producer or an executive that has diverse taste. And the projects that are considered and the projects that are brought to me as a producer, the material that I get from agencies or managers, I make it known I can do any type of project. I have all kinds of tastes, and I'm going to, in this next iteration of my career, I'm going to prove that I can do more than just the African American comedy and the thriller. I have a few projects in development right now that are going to probably be Latino casted or Caucasian casted, or it could be a period piece, or it could be something that is not expected of us at Will Packer Productions. And I'm doing that because I didn't get the opportunity to do that as an executive. I was placed in a box. And that's the resentment I have more than anything, more than just being in the room, being the only one in the room, is being told or treated as if you understand this material, so you do this. And don't worry about the 1965 period piece. We'll give that to someone else. And so that is the struggle I feel that African American executives in this business and producers have. If you look at the very few executives that there are at the studio level and the types of projects that they're shepherding, that kind of tells you.
I mean, it's that you know, I totally agree, and it's probably felt much more acutely as an African American producer. It is, I have to tell you, I have had very successful clients who are white producers who feel exactly the same way in terms of they only get comedies. They only get kid comedies. They only get chick flicks. They only get, there's this tremendous desire to compartmentalize people in our business across the board.
Sure.
As you see it as to actors. Every now and then an actor will sing or dance and you'll be surprised. Or an actor will be very good in a serious role and you'll look at their resume and they went to Juilliard. Of course they can do that. But it's just a problem with the industry across the board. But speaking to Andrea's point, and I totally agree with everything you said about ICM and about the predominance of people of color at ICM vis-a-vis your competitors. But the thing we really need to remember is that in all of the agencies, there are virtually no women and no people of color who have true equity in those businesses, okay? And I mean it. And even in businesses where you see where women are heads of departments within agencies, they are not owners of the agency. And that's really the difference, because that's where the real wealth is, and the ability to make change. You know, in the history of the agency business, none of the major agencies have had a woman who has been a president, a white woman who's been a president of the agency. And if you look at it, you know, you look at a place like, let's say WME, and you'll say, well, so-and-so was a partner. There was well, Charles King was a partner there. WME is run by a board of directors, okay, who exist totally outside of the partnership. And those are the people who own and run the agency. So you can be a partner and not be an owner. You can be a department head and not be an owner. You can be a partner and not have equity. And because we don't really understand the nuances of those businesses, we have to remember these are businesses that are not only privately owned, but they have always discriminated from a socioeconomic standpoint. And the way they do that is they bring up new employees through an internship program that basically makes it impossible for people who don't have a certain degree of wealth or support to come up through those systems. And so that is what, and unfortunately the people who are in the business were all trained in that way, and they believe in that system, and it's very hard to get them to understand that the very way in which they run their businesses gives rise to a level of discrimination and a limitation on who will get in, which ultimately leads to who will succeed. And that's really the fatal flaw of the agency, and in some cases the large management businesses. Until they start paying interns on a living wage, so that almost anyone who is of merit could be an intern. But right now you come into those businesses, and for the most part, if you don't have a family who can support you, or conversely, if you have family obligations. You know, many of us came out of college and we immediately needed to help support our families. You know, our coming out of school was something that our families looked forward to, because they needed us to help be part of the support system for the family. They didn't need us to go in and work a minimum wage job for another 4 to 6 years and not return. But as long as the agencies continue in that way, it will be virtually impossible for them to have true socioeconomic diversity, as well as diversity as to ethnic and other, you know, other characteristics that are in the predominant culture.
I mean, I think the only other thing I'll add to that, and I agree 100%, and thanks for making that point, is, you know, a lot of the agencies have these entry-level positions. So, you know, you might walk into any given agency and you'll see a lot of people of color. They're mainly assistants, you know, they're working in the mailroom. But when you start rising the ranks, you know, and when you talk about it's the entry level, it's then the success that you've had, because a number of us have had success, but then it's like maintaining that. The attrition rate, you look to the highest level, to your point, are you maintaining those individuals who have been able to rise up the ranks over the years? That's the real, I think,
the answer
assessment.
is almost uniformly none,
None.
because it's a mentorship business. If you can't be mentored by someone who will kind of guide your path through it, and unfortunately what happens is that, like in all mentorship situations, we tend to want to mentor people who remind us of ourselves. So to the extent that someone doesn't connect, people within our business, and probably within a lot of businesses, they want diversity, but what they want is they want us to look different from them, but be exactly like them. They don't want true cultural diversity. They don't want to hear the differences that come with the differences in our culture. They want kind of a chocolate version of themselves, someone who will sit in the room and be perceived as being just like all the other people in the room, except they're African American, or they're woman, or they're Latino, or they're something. But they don't want to change the mold to really accept the differences that different people bring.
That's really sad, because I think that pervades many industries, the technology industry,
across the board.
The media industry. You know, that you pointed out that many people can't afford to take these internships, and that's why we have these vanilla newsrooms. People can't afford to work, you know, in these newsrooms for free in the hopes that they will get a job. It's amazing. I mean, it seems like we've got a lot of work to do. And it's daunting, but I think we can definitely do it. But it seems that the tone, though, is optimism. Do you believe that there is an opportunity for that system, the agency system, to transform or to change in some way, given that we're seeing that this is why you're not getting diversity up in the ranks?
If you are a successful person and you are a client of an agency, a client of a management company, a client of a law firm, you are well within your rights to say to the people who represent you, I'm uncomfortable when I come here. Why are there so few people who look like me? And the question I would ask of people who are in that position, why don't you ask that question more? You know, there are now people who, I don't know if you are clear on some of the economics of our business, but you can be a talent in a television series, and that agency can make maybe $2-3 million a year off of the package fees from your television show. And if you have the right, and this is something that I always say to clients, you know, these people work for you. You absolutely have the right to walk into and say, I want to meet with the head of the agency, and I want him to explain to me why I paid $3 or $4 million in commissions last year, and I barely see anyone who looks like me.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was incredible.